Hello and welcome to Unco, a podcast about what's unusual in tech. I'm your host, Timothy Buck. This week, Louie Mantia, the founder of Parakeet and a former designer for Apple and the prestigious Iconfactory, chatted with me about iconography, his wonderful obsession with Memoji, the delightful addition of new colors in macOS Mojave, the sad lack of personality in modern app design, and a few uniquely opinionated and fun-filled apps. If you're enjoying what I'm doing with my interviews each week and would like to hear more conversations with interesting people like Louie, help me keep the show around by becoming a patron over on patreon.com/uncofm. Thank you all so much for your support. Hey Louie, how's it going?
Oh, good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's really great to have you on the show. I'm really excited about this.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. I don't get the chance to podcast about this sort of stuff that often.
Yeah, so that's what I've been enjoying about the show. The premise is talking about what's unusual in tech, but I've defined that pretty broadly. So I've had designers on from a bunch of different companies. I had a guy who does, he writes and illustrates graphic novels, and he came on. And I've also had developers and founders of companies and more traditional tech media on as well. But it's just broad enough that the question I end with, which is about what's unusual in tech, gives it a little bit of consistency. But I'm able to bring people on from all different parts of the tech world, from really technical to more design side of things.
Yeah, that's a pretty good spectrum then that you have.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with it. It's just the type of people that I like to talk to. So I find that the types of podcasts I listen to are ones where the people are having fun with the conversation. So yeah, that's kind of why it is where it is right now. But yeah, I guess to start it off, could you just tell me and my listeners a little bit of your story, who you are, and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Louie. I'm an icon designer primarily, mostly just drawing shapes and symbols, but also illustrations. I've been doing it for a little over a decade now, which feels weird to say. I mostly got started out like many other people that are in the field around my age. They got caught up tinkering with some computer or device that they had, wondering how it worked, figuring out how they can influence how it works, whether visually or, with code. And where some people kind of moved into engineering, I moved into icon design, which is really a really small field to be in. There aren't too many people who do exclusively icon design. So I find myself in a kind of a funny place. I started like a 14-year-old kid in the basement with Windows and realizing that when you right click and hit properties on any item on the system, you can change the icon. And then I started to figure out, maybe I can make icons. Where do these icons come from? Who makes them? How are they stored? What sizes can they be? And everything kind of exploded from there. So I've worked at various companies, being Tapulous, making Tap Tap Revenge, one of the first iPhone games, to the Iconfactory in North Carolina, making just ton of icons and making software like Twitterific. Then I moved to Apple, worked on iTunes for a little bit, and some other iLife and consumer product software, and then went to Square for a little brief stint to work on some fun, cute mobile design for a little while, and then started two companies. One, Pacific Helm, in San Francisco with a few friends. That was a little design shop focused around mobile design, and now Parakeet, which almost exclusively focuses on icons and illustration.
Are you still doing Pacific Helm?
No. Pacific Helm's been kind of under for a few years. Everyone kind of went their separate ways. Jesse is, doing the Layers conference now, which is super cool. Mm-hmm. And then Brad is now working at Lyft after doing some freelance stuff for a little while. And I moved up to Portland and founded Parakeet with Alexa.
It's really cool. What exactly do you do? I see you tweet a lot about Disney and Disney icons and stuff like that. What exactly are you doing for them?
Oh, I'm not doing anything for Disney. That's mostly a side project I
really?
have to
I
keep
didn't know
myself
that.
entertained. Yeah. I've got a few like little things I do on the side. I've got Magic Passport. I have, I've got Crown Type, which is my small little type foundry I made last year, if you can call it that. I just made like a few fonts over the summer last year, which was super fun. And then there is Primaries, which is part of, it's a Parakeet product. It's just hundreds of icons, and then Junior, which is kind of a physical games company sort of thing that I'm working on right now. It's just a little thing to eat up all my time, really. So Magic Passport is just one of these few projects that I set aside to just kind of distract my brain in different directions.
So, okay, I thought Magic Passport was actually for Disney, so I guess that's good that you. What exactly is it then? I'm looking at the website.
Yeah, so Magic Passport used to be. It currently is on the store, but it's super out of date. It was a tool that we made at Pacific Helm, because there was the few of us that worked at Pacific Helm loved to go to Disneyland together, and we liked being able to remember all the things we did a certain day. So kind of like a digital scrapbook, but without like the photo component, just the list of everything you've done. Jessie, who used to work at Pacific Helm as well, she kept a notes document just writing down all of the attractions that we saw that day and whatever. And but it just kind of evolved from this, where what if we just had like this way to do checklists, check off all the things that you did in that day, not so much checking in that you don't have to physically be there to technically do it. It's just kind of a glorified database of all of these things. But when we launched the app, I think I only made like 10 to 20 icons or so, and now I've got like 500, and it's really weird and maybe won't go anywhere because I don't actively work on the app. It's just kind of a little icon project to like I said, keep my mind distracted with something that I like drawing, something that I know that has a lot of stuff to illustrate in that particular style, and it's just kind of a fun little side project for me.
That's really cool. Yeah, it's funny. I just like kind of seen it in passing over time, and my assumption was always that it was actually for Disney. But I guess that's a good good problem to have, where your work looks high enough quality to be an actual Disney product. So that's cool.
Yeah, there is some like interesting back and forth kind of things about that, like feelings that I have about the quality and the design of them. The style of them looks like they could be Disney, which is maybe a wonderful compliment to hear, but on the other side, a very conflicting thing for me, because now I've drawn these 500, icons that look like they belong to them, and they don't look like they belong to me, which I would say is like something, that's my job. I take, metaphors for a lot of, things that you might see in an app, and make branded versions of those for different companies, whether that be, Nike or Facebook or whoever. And this one is not a project for Disney, but it's kind of like this, weird fictional project that I have, where I'm doing the same exact thing, except there's really no end game here. There's no goal. There's nothing. There's no end in sight. It's just like a hobby.
Yeah. Well, you kind of threw me there, but it's cool. It's a really cool project, and I will link to. I think you have like a Twitter or something for it that has a bunch of them. I'll try to find that and link to it, so that if anybody listening is interested, they can take a look at all the different icons you've made. So I guess kind of moving on a little bit from the work that you've been doing in iconography to what exactly is it, and how do you explain to somebody the value that comes from like a really high quality custom icon set or a custom like app icon when there's so much free stuff out there and cheap stuff out there?
Yeah, it's true. It's I don't want to say it's super commoditized, but there is a lot of free resources available that have no restrictions on using them. Mm-hmm. Tons of, icon sets that are way bigger than primaries, our own stock icon set. And we push for as many of our clients that, don't have the time or can't afford, custom icons to use that sort of stuff like primaries. But when there's so much of that stuff out there, the value has to, I think, be already kind of firmly planted inside our client before they come to us. I luckily don't need to convince anyone of that sort of stuff anymore. I think that generally people who want that, they're the people who end up, being the people we work with. And that's a really great thing. I mean, I do think there is inherent value in creating, custom iconography for, different use cases, different products, different sizes. I mean, part of my job is trying to come up with the, appropriate metaphor for that brand, and, a house drawn, that I might draw hundreds of times for different clients will look different every time because each client's style is different. And every house can't look the same. And a house for Instagram definitely looks different from a house, that you might see in the Nike app. So those things have to look different and they have to feel different. They have to feel like their respective brands. And especially with, one color symbolic iconography, there's only shape that you get to work with. You don't get to work with a lot of color. So the shape has to tell a lot. So when we drew the Nike suite of icons, the house, along with many of the other icons, share the same angle that the Nike swoosh is at, which maybe people don't recognize as they're using it, but it feels, all of the icons feel like they belong to Nike inherently because they share things like that. They have, a certain sharp quality to them. They look like they're a little fast, which is, one of the things that the swoosh was designed to accomplish. And so we approach our iconography similar to, the brand and the brand ethos behind whatever company we're working for.
Yeah, that's a good answer. It's really cool that you've been able to set yourselves and set Parakeet up as really like the company to go to for things like that. How did you go about doing that?
Well, I think in the past work that I've done working for other companies, specifically around working for Apple and working for the Iconfactory, those two jobs in particular were fundamental in trying to figure out what works internally and what works externally. And I mean internal design teams at Apple talking amongst themselves, working together, having a central design goal, and external companies like the Iconfactory that work with clients, that work in client services, that are meeting the needs of the client. So in one case, you're working on a goal that is shared amongst an entire company, and the other is working for another company's goals. And for me, I can adapt to either of these things. And so I think what I wanted Parakeet, and to some extent Pacific Helm at the time too, to be, was to marry those two things together. A lot of studios, exist to create iconography and high quality iconography, or logos and that sort of stuff. But there seemed to be a need for branded iconography and iconography specifically made for very specific use cases. I have been making app icons since before the App Store existed for the iPhone. Before the App Store existed, I was making like little app icons for people's phones if they jailbroke them. And that is the only reason that I managed to get into this industry in any significant way, which has been a fun ride to be on. So I think that part of where Parakeet is positioned right now is that culminating over the last 10 years. And I'm really proud that Parakeet is able to, have, these clients that care about iconography. But I do think that also since iOS 7 became a thing, people are refocusing their attention on things like iconography, because as design got generally simpler to parse visually, those icons made more of an impact inside of people's apps, so people began to look for them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially because some of the other design features that used to be used to set an app apart from another app have been kind of moved away from. So now a way to make their app stand out is to make sure that their iconography is custom and is unique.
Yeah, I think that's probably the same reason that we're seeing a lot of these tech companies create and or commission their own typefaces. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously the big companies like, Facebook, Google, Apple are all doing this, but we're starting to see even smaller companies or companies in other arenas start to create their own custom typefaces. And that's super cool because it allows their brand to speak in the tone that they want across their entire, branded efforts. Whether that be apps or, advertisements, it doesn't matter because they can use it everywhere. And I think that's something that's been really cool that Apple did with San Francisco. They no longer have to use Myriad for their product packaging and then Lucida Grande or Helvetica for their OSs. Now they have the same typeface, the same tone, mm-hmm. no matter where you see their stuff. And I think iconography and type, share that same thing where they became important to specifically software at about the same time, which is great. And it's I think it's exciting for type designers and it's exciting for icon designers like myself.
Is Sharp Grotesque the one made by, or that Dropbox uses, is that custom or is that one that they just bought? I'm
not sure. I think that might be just one that was purchased, but I'm not familiar with like the Sharp Type Foundry.
Okay, yeah. I just remember when their brand identity came out, I read a good bit about it, and it seemed like an interesting choice for a type, and it can be used in a lot of interesting ways. But I'm not familiar with the specifics of that either.
Yeah.
So what to you separates iconography from other types of design in I guess approach and in the skill set needed to do it well?
Well, I mean, all design is just a different form of problem solving. And when I started doing anything in the design related field, I started with icons, then went into, software design for a little while and then went back to icons. So I've kind of experienced this I don't know how to describe it, but I dipped into one thing and kind of came out where I started, but all that stuff in the middle was super valuable to me because I learned that a lot of people think about, these problems in very similar ways, mostly in that you're trying to get the user to understand how to do something. If they have that goal, they should be able to do it with minimal effort on their part. And a software designer's role should be to make all of those options super available and ready for them, and contextual, like in the right moment, they should see the options that are appropriate. But for icon designers, it's not too dissimilar. for icon designers, picking the right metaphors for something, also making sure that those are presented in a way that look well together, that harmonize, that are different enough from each other to distinguish from another. Those are all goals that are focused on that same overall goal, which is the user should not find it difficult. And I think that is like one of the fundamental parts of UI and icon design specifically. But I personally enjoy trying to make those things as different as possible. There's something that I saw at some point, and I'm not really sure where in the past 10 years I saw it, but there's a beautiful example of this when looking at the Aladdin model sheet. And I mean like Aladdin, like the Disney film. And when you look at the models that are presented of the entire character lineup from Genie, Aladdin, Jasmine, Jafar, and the Sultan, they all have entirely different body shapes. And some of that reflects, how the character is, what their character is like, but it also is distinguished from each other so that you can identify them by shape alone. And seeing that same thing reappear as soon as like Inside Out came out, or even in The Incredibles, every single main character has this incredibly different silhouette, and that is something that is crucial in icon design that I think that plays really well with the broader design goal of making things accessible to users, because UI designers, interaction designers have this same problem, especially when dealing with similar sets of data. When you see tweets that are just like, hundreds of tweets or hundreds of photos, each of those things look different in their own, but then you also have to deal with how to interact with each one of these, how to interact with each icon and what those mean, and all of these controls, all of these icons, everything needs to be distinct so that the user can make a confident choice. And I think that's why icon design seems really super interesting to me, because every time I get to design like a certain set of icons, client comes to me with 10 different icons that I need to make. My goal is to make them as different as possible while looking like they all belong together. And I don't know, I relish the challenge.
Going back to how you described it at the beginning, it's problem solving at its core, and that can be fun.
Yeah.
So one thing I noticed in following you on Twitter is that you've been having a lot of fun with Animoji.
Yeah.
And for anybody who doesn't, well, actually, and more specifically, Memoji, which is the Animoji for iOS 12, where you can basically like build your own and like little, I don't even know how to describe it. Build your own.
They're little avatars, right?
Yeah, build your own avatar.
The little personifications of yourself.
Yeah. So what drew you to that, and what do you like about them?
I think there's something very similar to icon design that resonates with me. Kind of like that thing I was describing earlier about making them distinct. Characters are really fun in that same way. Looking at, how people might draw different human beings or different objects is a really fun thing. Determining all of these differences and almost amplifying them to get vastly different results. And I've been doing, I've been making Memoji for every single one of my friends for my contact photos, which is actually super, super great because everything is very consistent, but everyone has, some fun attributes that make me remember who they are based on some very, very specific set of attributes, be hair, eyes, eyebrows, nose, lips, facial hair, all that sort of stuff. And the Memoji specifically represented to me just kind of a different canvas to work within. I'm very used to working like in a 48 by 48 grid, where I get a certain amount of pixels, and I have maybe put some constraints on myself about like how round things get to be and all that jazz. But Memoji is kind of a thing where I'm like, ooh, a new little canvas to play in, where I get to choose all of these new things, and the constraints are set by someone else. So I get to work within those constraints and try to be as expressive and creative as possible. Which in the case of making some fun, my friends Memoji, like characters from Inside Out or the Brady Bunch, it gets to be like a fun challenge to try to represent those people well enough that people can recognize them, which is, like I said, not too dissimilar from icon design. I need to communicate something, and if someone understands it, then it worked.
Yeah, it's been really impressive, especially because there are so many constraints. I mean, there are a lot of different things you can change, but there's only like, a handful of noses, a handful of head shapes, and like a handful of eyes and different things like that. So you really have to know what makes a person's face distinguishable and just focus on those things.
And our brains are doing a lot of that already, which is super cool. I mean, the idea that, that I can remember and recognize hundreds of different people and their names when I see them, is something that's pretty spectacular. There are significant differences between human beings' faces, despite having very similar characteristics. And, like I said, exaggerating those characteristics, amplifying them in this form factor is way too much fun.
Yeah. I have so far only made one for myself, but I think that idea of making one for like your top contacted contacts is really good. What is your workflow for that? Do you just like make it in iMessage and then save it out as an image, and then
yeah, it's a little cumbersome, admittedly. Right now, it's not super streamlined because there's not a really great way to save out, first of all, a high resolution version of these. So the best, as far as I can get right now, is that after you've created one, I strike a pose that is often something that makes me remember that person. So especially if there's a specific photograph that they have as a profile picture that I've added to their contact already to my computer as a profile picture, I'll make that same pose and try to make a background color the same way. But yeah, I'll just send it as just a Memoji sticker, and on iMessage on my computer I'll just drag it out, and luckily it has transparency, which is super great.
Nice.
But it is aliased around the edges, which is a bummer of like doing high performance 3D art on the phone, so I can't blame them a lot. But then throwing it into Photoshop, sizing them to match, and adding some kind of background.
That is a lot of work. I wish Apple would make that easier, or allow for like the sharing of them. That would be cool.
Yeah. I agree. After making all of these, I realized that some of my friends also have the beta, and they made their own Memoji of themselves, and in those cases I kind of want to use theirs because I think they recognize and understand the intricacies of their face better than I do. But it's unfortunate that there is not really a speedy way to do this in terms of sharing the Memoji. If someone sends it to me, I don't get the actual 3D, thing. I can't pose myself. I'm just getting their sticker. But as far as contact photos, gosh, I would love that. Like, why can't I set mine as my like avatar on iCloud, and then every single user that has my phone number or something on their phone gets that contact picture? I don't know. It seems like a good way to go.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a relic of the way the contacts work. it's not like Facebook Messenger or whatever where...
Oh, for sure.
Right,
yeah, there's not a centralized location.
Yeah. And everybody's contacts are different. So like some of them have like several of your email addresses and your phone number, and some of them maybe just have an email address, or it pulled in your like Facebook. And that's a hard problem to solve.
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely, I wish there was a way to share the actual like 3D interactive design. So like some of the ones that you've done that weren't like people but were instead characters, it would be really cool if you could like tweet it and people could just start using that for fun as well.
Yeah, that would be super great. It kind of reminds me of like Mii's on Nintendo's Wii platform. Like you could share those and exchange those, and I feel like once we get that, then that'll be like a really fun thing that we'll start to see more of what people can make, which will be super fun. So I'm looking forward to it. I imagine that will happen at some point.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's very focused on iMessage. It's like a differentiator for iMessage, and that seems to be the value that Apple like sees it bringing them.
Oh yeah, 1,000,000%.
Yeah, and I would like to see them expand it from there, but I'm not expecting it to be anytime in the next year or so, just because that really does seem to be where they think the value is coming from. So what is one thing that you find unusual in tech right now?
I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think lately I'm finding things a little sterile, and it may not seem unusual given the past couple of years, but I find it interesting that so many companies don't have, I don't know what I'm trying to articulate so much. There doesn't seem to be a lot of personality in software, and I'd like to see that happen. I was just, it's been 10 years since the App Store. We were, recently all celebrating on Twitter, and some people were sharing some screenshots of their first iPhone app purchases. And looking among them, I remember so many pleasant, fun, delightful, little bundles of joy that were these, early iPhone apps that had so much personality, so much opinion baked into them. And something that seems a little unusual to me is we don't seem to see that all that much anymore. So if I ever download an app or a piece of software in general that has something that reminds me of that level of personality, I get super excited. And I think that's perhaps why I'm enjoying Memoji so much, because that is one of the most fun things that Apple has made in a long time. There's, all of these little things that they do, some little cute things that happen, but for the most part, things have become pretty utilitarian. And I miss when things were, God, I feel so old when I'm like, oh, the good old days when things used to be fun. But it does seem to be lacking. It feels a little unusual to have missed that. I would like to see that return. I would like to see more of that sort of stuff. It doesn't have to be super highly detailed, crazy, photorealistic, illustration rendering of UI. But, it would be nice to see something that is a little more opinionated. I went to look at a bunch of this, most recent screenshots of some high-profile apps, and their screenshots of over the years since the original iOS. And I have to say, like, almost everyone is every single app is just white. And nav bar, tab bar, like the body, it's all white. and someone might have a dark mode. You might have like a color for your nav bar, but as far as like, having color, gosh, that seems unusual. People, like Spotify and Dropbox, companies like Spotify and Dropbox created these, fun new brands with exciting, crazy colors, which I think, by the way, are the same design studio that made both of those new brands. But they kind of have these almost dissonant colors that, when thrown together, still just kind of are provocative and work, and it's fun. But at the same time, I see them nowhere. Like in the app, everything is white, black, and blue,
right?
And in Spotify, everything's black and green and white. And what happened to themes? What happened to color? What happened to personality? It seems unusual to not see that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I was gonna, before you mentioned Dropbox, I was gonna mention them as like their brand design is fun to me. I really enjoyed reading like their process and all the stuff that they shared around that, and all the different ways they can use the type and use the colors together, and there's just so many different variations. But you're right, I just opened the Dropbox app and it's just like all white with like blue, like when you've selected a page, the icon turns blue. And
yeah, where did those fun colors go? What are they for? Are they only for marketing? Are they only for advertising? Are they only for bus stop posters when I'm walking around in San Francisco? Like,
right.
I mean, don't act like I ever see like any Dropbox ads here in Portland, like that. It's so funny walking around San Francisco after not having lived there, for a little while, that those kinds of like advertisements, I just don't see them. And I kind of imagine that Spotify and Dropbox and those sorts of companies that, come up with these crazy, like I said, provocative colors to use in their brand, don't use it beyond their marketing. So it almost feels like a false sell, like you show me this poster, crazy fun colors. I get the app. Let's say I've never used it before. I get the app and it feels dissonant. It doesn't feel like the same thing you sold me on.
Right.
And not to say that like I want things to be green and like peach color, all the time, but I think there is something to be said for brand colors, and if you're going to be willy-nilly about them in your, marketing, and then be super conservative in your actual product, that just sounds like an inconsistent tone to me. And yeah, I'd love to see more fun. I don't know why everyone's so afraid of it. Maybe everyone's looking at metrics.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, I expect that the like marketing brand department at Dropbox had a different goals than like the product team who's actually building it. And
for sure,
it's all metrics based. And
absolutely. I will say there was a fun thing that I did not expect with the new version of macOS in what is this called now? Is it High Sierra?
It's
now?
Mojave or
Mojave,
or however
God,
you
that's
say
right.
that.
High Sierra was the last one. Mojave, yeah, because it has dark mode. Fine, sure, yeah, that's fine. But what I didn't expect is like in system preferences in the general tab, along with the light and dark appearance, there's accent colors. There's blue and purple and pink and red and orange and yellow and green and gray. And previously we only ever had blue and graphite. So having pink, like I'm having pink accents, which feels so weird and silly, and it's like I never get to see that. Like pink is so underused in UI, and like I don't know, seeing all of my selections in pink, but also seeing like radio buttons and checkboxes and hover states of fields and all that sort of stuff be pink is. God, man, I'm not making it sound very exciting. It sounds like it's super, super dumb. And I don't know, maybe it's actually not that much, but it's one of the most exciting, weird things to happen on the Mac visually in such a long time.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I was excited to see that come. I don't have the beta on my Mac because I don't do that. I do put it on my phone, but I don't put betas on my Mac. Yeah. So is there a company that you see that does have a lot of personality, that like, or an app or some piece of software out there that you would say really is showing personality in like the design style that they're using?
That's interesting. I don't know if I'd say that this style is super super crazy or anything, but I do appreciate Square Cache, in that Square Cache has completely committed to like full screen green.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's super cool because I swear to God, I'm looking at like as you asked that question, I'm like looking at my phone, and every single app that I have on here from a third party, mind you, is like Square Cache, Caviar, Postmates, Lyft. Well, you can see what I'm spending my money on. But then, I get to stuff like, deliveries and Twitter and Line. And that's about it. Everything else is just all pretty much stock apps. But not stocks apps, you know what I mean? Apps that come on the phone. But Caviar, it's all just white. Postmates is mostly just white. Lyft is white, and they're using some splashes of purple and pink, which is cool because, I don't know, purple adding to the pink palette they have is kind of cool. And I like some new visual styling that Lyft is doing lately.
Yeah, I really love their updated, like, I feel like their updated app is a lot better than it was before. I'm really,
for sure,
really
absolutely.
happy with it.
But maybe, one app that I love to tout because of its visual styling is Deliveries. Deliveries by Mike Piontek is it was one of the first apps I ever purchased on my phone. It also has a Mac component. It tracks all my deliveries and everything, but it's not just white. It's got like this like, stale blue colors, in the background, but each delivery service, has its own color scheme, like FedEx is purple, and United States Postal Service is like, blue and white, and, Amazon is orange, all that jazz. And it uses all of these colors as a design tool to indicate to you what service is for each package. And that's super cool because when I open the app, it can be like a variety of colors, and they're all useful to me. These aren't just like colors for the sake of colors, which is another thing entirely. But
yeah,
I guess
that's a good app. I've been using it on iOS and Mac for, I don't know, a long time.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, one of the most opinionated apps that I have is Line, which is a chat app that is fairly popular in Japan that I mostly use to chat with my Japanese friends, if I'm honest. But the thing that's really fun about it that I think some other chat apps have, or at least I've seen on Android as well, setting your background or setting, styles of the app, or having a bunch of different kinds of stickers and stuff. And maybe this is just messaging and communications apps in general, is they seem to have a lot of fun lately, where some other apps are just very super boring. So I'm enjoying using iMessage, obviously, for the Animoji and Memoji and just stickers in general, text effects. Like, that stuff is fun to me. I don't get any enjoyment out of opening most other apps. And not to say that like Calendar needs to be flashy or anything, but Twitter, for being like this app that I almost use like I use way too much. Like,
right.
It almost, like, I don't mean to pick on them, in terms of their visual quality, because they have good iconography, they have a generally good color scheme, but for all of the crazy, wide variety of content that exists on the platform, the actual app and the design itself feels a little stale to me. And it's no doubt to me that, all the designers there are working toward a singular goal, but it almost feels like Twitter should be a little bit more personalized. I kind of like I mentioned earlier with themes. Gosh, I miss themes. I miss like the Mac being able to have themes, visual fun tricks that used to be in there. I mean, I don't miss just crazy apps like Delicious Library and whatever, but I miss like having some visual qualities that were just to be fun and weird. And yeah, I think messaging apps are all we've got now.
Yeah, I know WhatsApp allows you to set like a background image, or they have like a bunch of ones that are in there for free that you can choose from. That's been around in there for a long time. But other than that, I can't really think of that many apps that really let you customize, apart from maybe a few dark modes and maybe changing the icon color.
Yeah, which I will say that is a cool thing that we did manage to get in I don't know whether it was iOS 11 or 10, somewhere in there. We got custom app icons, and that like app developers can include multiple versions of their app icon for people to use. Like, I know Overcast has like a dark mode one because I made that. But, you know, I mean, HQ has a few, and Tinder has one if you upgrade and all that sort of stuff. Like, it's cool that we can get those. Like, I think it was actually for like the MLB, that if you had the MLB app but you wanted it to look like your team, like if you wanted to be the Cardinals or the Giants, you could do that. I think that is a fun thing that we get to do. But customization, God, when you said that, customization has to be, I think, the number one reason that people switch from iOS to Android, is because they find Android to be customizable and flexible and personality like everywhere. But then iOS is just what Apple wants it to be.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I also feel like 90% of the people I know who use Android have like the same home screen. They have
it's true.
They have like the Google search.
They may have all made the same decisions. Yeah.
They have the Google search thing. They have the icons at the bottom. They have like maybe weather on there. But yeah, it's
I mean, it's definitely a thing that I feel like appeals to, you know, certain demographics, you know, a certain amount, you know, of individuals within, you know, certain age ranges might care a little bit more. And it's probably people who want to take the time to do that sort of stuff. But I mean, I'm thinking about Line, and how Line, you can have like your entire app, like have a Mickey Mouse theme just because. And that's super cool. I kind of wish that software could be like that, but I think what happened maybe along the line somewhere, apps became, you know, built in so many different ways with different styles, even if they're all imitating the same style. And so theming things is not super easy anymore, unless you're doing it like case by case in each app, which I think might be valuable. I think that there's value in making fun, you know, exciting versions of apps. Timothy, are you familiar with Jessica Hish?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Something that I really like that she has done on her website for a long time is that she has like little themes for her website. As I say this, admittedly, I am not sure if it's still there, but she used to have like her current like Jessica Hish style that she had, but then you could hit a button and it turned into teen girl mode, and everything became pink and black and sparkly gifs everywhere, and it was super silly and fun, and she had it on there for a very, very long time. If it's not still there, and I'm gonna keep looking.
I'm looking around. But, yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I don't see anything, which I'm just like, oh gosh, it's just calling me out on the fact that I brought it up now. But
I do love her client email helper. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, it's super, super great. I love it. I definitely like when she first introduced that. I remember looking at that, being like, oh, that's how I should be talking to people. It's really hard. But she does a really good job of communication. Jessica. She's a very good designer. But suffice to say, she had fun, with different styling just because. And I think that's not over yet. I think we need more of that.
Yeah, and I also think that like it's going to become more. I feel like it's becoming easier. I know, like I'm a product manager at a finance company, and we built software for like our end users, and because of the type of like basically just the way we built it, it was really, really easy to do a theme. And so even though this is like software about financing, in their like account settings, they can change it to dark mode. And that was like basically free for us. All we had to do is like change a couple, hex colors, right? And add a button. And at least in web-based apps, I think I hope to see more of it because it is getting a whole lot easier. It's not like you have to completely rebuild everything.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you've already outlined, your entire color scheme with, however many hex values you have. Like you said, all you got to do is come up with another one and maybe another one and maybe another one that just look different enough and that all have, the right contrast ratio you need. But, talking about this, especially, with hex values, you reminded me, this was a thing that I was working on in Magic Passport, my little weird side project. Like, I made, like, God, I don't know, over a dozen different themes for it in the past year or two, just because, there's ones that resemble different colors from different attractions or different parks or different areas and stuff. And some of them are color schemes that I could absolutely never see in apps today because I think we mentioned it earlier, it probably wouldn't test well.
Yeah.
But they're fun, and fun's got to count for something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is valuable, especially in... I think it can even provide like a business value, right? It's not just like... Today, it will be a differentiator because so many people have the same like white and some shade of blue. Just like we were talking about before, people are beginning to invest more in icons and custom fonts and stuff to make themselves stand out. But maybe another way to do that would be to allow for some more fun in design. We've kind of like swung one way pretty far, and I think we are hopefully going to kind of swing back a little bit and allow for a little bit more variation, a little bit more like uniqueness.
Yeah, over the past, how many years has it been since iOS 7? Gosh, I mean, we're on iOS 12 right now, so it's been like, a few years here. And every year that I have this conversation about, gosh, this style is just, God, we went all the way in this one direction, everyone's always like, the pendulum will swing back again. I'm like, really? The whole, this is all depending on the designer's will to do so and, the management of companies to be bold enough to bother. And if none of these companies feel so inclined to do it and these designers, aren't, I don't want to say necessarily brave enough, but if they don't stick to it and commit to it and try to push it internally as much as possible, it's not going to swing back as quickly as we think it's going to. And I think that Square Cache is an incredible example of just how to do like an inverted color scheme. White on green is so cool compared to any color on white. And dark modes are fine, but why can't background colors be blue or orange or red? It's like there's so many colors. And, we got so much fidelity on our screens. And we use 90% of the pixels on the screen are white. And that feels pretty dumb.
Yeah, I agree. So do you have anything you want to just share at the end, somewhere people can find you on the internet or something that you want people to check out?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mentioned a few of my side projects, and I don't need to rattle off all of those now, but I'm at Mantia on most platforms, and on Twitter, I, of course, link to all the other various things that I work on, so that's an easy way to get there. Yeah, I don't know where else to look for me. That's where I am most of the time, is on Twitter.
Okay, great. Yeah, I will definitely link that in the show notes. You guys can find me on Twitter as well at TimothyBuckSF, and you can find Unco on Twitter at _UncoFM. Thank you so much for coming on, Louie.
Thanks, Timothy. I really appreciated the chance to talk with you about this stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Cool. So we're done.
Yeah,
now.
so we're done.
Oh my god. All right.